Hey there, I'm Lee Rowley, and this is Lee After Dark. Why? Because there's more to being a business leader than just business. Each episode, one brave entrepreneur ejects the elevator pitch and just gets real. Today, I'd like to welcome my friend Lee Lander. Lee, how are you today?
I'm good, Lee. How are you?
I am fantastic, thank you. And thank you so much for taking time out of your day to chat with us. So the rules are simple. So for the next 20 minutes, we can talk about anything you want except your business. Afterward, you'll have up to 5 minutes to pitch up a storm. But if you mention your business during the interview, you'll lose 1 minute of pitch time at the end for each infraction. So we're going to keep you honest here, right? You ready to play?
Let's
All
do
right.
it.
Cool. Well, let me set the timer here for 20 minutes. And what are we getting into for the next 20 minutes?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me on here. This is a lot of fun. I've been enjoying watching your other episodes and catching up with what everybody's doing. I've been learning so much about people. This is super cool. I love it.
Thank you very much. I've been learning a lot as well. I find that I get as much out of it as anybody. So, it seems a little unfair, but I'll take it. Yeah.
You bet. So today I was thinking we could discuss the thing that everyone likes to sweep under the rug and talk about a little bit of mental health and mental illness and all that kind of stuff.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, great. Yeah, let's dive right into that. That's something that actually comes up fairly frequently on this podcast.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, something to do with entrepreneurism, artisans, all that kind of stuff. I don't know. We walk a fine line of bravery and a little bit insanity. I don't know.
There has to be something going on that's different for us to want to go, nah, the corporate health insurance and the 9 to 5 and the getting to leave it all at work and the weekends and the vacations and the holidays. Nah, I don't need any of that.
Don't need it. Yeah, that was a scary moment jumping off that platform. But yeah, so, I started a group recently, speaking of which, I call it Dirt Under the Carpet. And it's a little closed Facebook group just because of this very reason. Is like, this is the thing nobody wants to talk about. Everyone wants to kind of sweep it under the rug and pretend like, it's not happening, or they just don't know how to talk about it. A lot of people. I mean, it's getting better. I mean, I have to say it's getting a lot better. We're making a lot of progress, but it's still one of those things that, like if someone has, cancer or something else, like my husband's dealing with that right now, people will offer all kinds of help for that. Like they're going to bring meals, they're going to wash my house, they're going to do everything, which we don't need right now, thankfully. But, if you mention you're in severe depression, I mean, people scatter away.
Sure.
And don't know what to do and pretend it's not happening, or they'll say like, just think yourself happy, and, or I'll pray for you, or you pray harder, or, like do all the things that you should be doing, but those things are really not helpful. So, you just gotta, you really have to do a lot of soul searching, right? And figure out what happened. I'll just kind of get into it. For me, it was like a crossroad, a intersection, a breakdown, total breakdown for me. And so I was forced to really look into what's going on because personally, like my mom had schizophrenia. So I grew up with a mom with severe mental illness as a child. And that was a really weird experience because back then, especially back then, no one knew what to do with that. And no one wanted to talk about it. And I, as a kid, also wanted to hide it. So I really didn't tell my teachers what I was dealing with. I just acted out kind of, and did some odd things. Plus we moved constantly. With my mom being unstable, we couldn't live in a place for more than sometimes 6 months, to a year if we were lucky. So we were on the move all the time, living with whoever, wherever, sometimes we'd have an apartment. Sometimes we were living with a relative, it was just a very disjointed childhood. So I never really got to make deep friendships or know how to do that. I mean, there were some times when I didn't even know the name of my school. Like when I look back and people are like, what was your name of your school? I don't even know some of my elementary school names. I don't even know where I was. And, but because of that, it was just dealing with that whole thing made me very interested in psychology from the get-go, because you're living it. And even at a young age, I didn't really understand or know, you could even study psychology. But as a kid, I was living these experiences, learning how to walk that fine line. And because you never know, I never knew what kind of, which mom I was going to get that day, or, if what I was going to say was going to set her off. Or, I mean, she would have outright hallucinations. I mean, it was severe at times. Okay. She would, here's some interesting things. Like, she hallucinated a couple of times that aliens were coming in through the light sockets, like electrical outlets. And so to protect me, she would unplug all of the electrical appliances, radios, phones, or whatever, like anything that was in a wall. She'd unplug everything and tape the outlets so the aliens couldn't come in through the outlets, and put me in the closet to keep me safe, Wow. And when you're 7, you're pretty sure this isn't true, but then you're just young enough where you still believe anything your parents say, right? And if they're that adamant about covering up the outlets and things like that, there's a hint of what if this is true? It's just kind of crazy. So stuff like that, dealing with that at a young age and trying to make sense of it, that was the weirdest. That was like I said, this is probably, her reality is probably not my reality, because you don't see the things she's seen. Like sometimes she'd see thousands of spiders on the wall, and she'd start freaking out and screaming at me to get the spiders off of her or something like that. And I'm like, I don't see the spiders. And then she'd get mad at me because I didn't see the spiders, and that would roll into another tailspin or whatever. But, so I knew enough to know that, okay, she's broken. I don't see what she's seeing. It's okay. But I got angry at her. I was just young, and I was angry, and I just needed a mom, and I needed protection. I need nurturing, all that kind of stuff. And I really wasn't getting it, because when you're a kid, it's all about you, and it's I was a little selfish, I guess, in that regard, because I just didn't understand it, and I was just kind of angry and just wanting her to be normal, and not realizing everything she was dealing with, all the battles she was dealing with. And not until I was an adult did I really understand the reality she dealt with. In her later years, she just passed away this January. A couple years ago, she has these moments of clarity, right? She has these moments where she's just completely normal, and that almost makes it harder. As a kid, that almost made it harder, because if she was just always gone, then you're like, okay. But when she would have moments of clarity and, love, and, those moments where you could feel her and see her and she was really there, it made those other moments harder, because she could turn in an instant, and you're trying to make sense of it. What is love to her? And my sense of love got way warped, because of all that. Sure. But a couple of years ago, she was sitting there and she had this moment of clarity, and she said, Leanne, I have to take all these medications for anyone to even like me. She's like, no one likes the real me. Wow. And it was it just stabbed my heart, because it's that's when I realized she's aware of her battle, and it's a battle that she's fought alone. She fought alone and hard. And, I came through in the end. As an adult, I came through and I helped her a lot. And I, moved her out of place after place, and, just tried to take care of her as best as I could. And that's the thing is, I have an older brother, and we always kind of joke, we didn't do the greatest at raising our mom. We just have to find some humor there. Sure. We did our best, but it was just a really human moment when she said that, and then she was gone the next 5 minutes, it's just, she's fleeting moments where it was very real. And the next moment she's like, hey, like she would talk nonsense all the time, like disjointed sentences and stuff that didn't make sense. So she, you know, after that moment that was so heavy and real, like she went back to talking about Russians doing x-rays and then room next door and you know, stuff like that.
Wow.
It was just wild.
What an experience. But then, you know, to know who you are today, and we've, you know, been friends for a while. So, you know, what do you think, I mean, you know, other than just you don't have a choice, gets you through something like that and keeps you from going, gosh, I can't take any more of this? Because, you know, when you're caring for someone like this, either as a child or as an adult, it's exhausting. And there are these times where it does feel personal, even though you know in your head, okay, look, this isn't really about me, or this isn't really about what we're saying it's about. This is something completely different. But you know, what do you think, you know, helped you through that?
Grit and the will to just take care of her, because it did shift. It shifted from me to like I'm the head of the household, because my parents did get divorced early on because of the illness. Not my dad's choice. My dad really fell into a deep depression because he really wanted to kind of save her and he couldn't. You know, mom was hallucinating that he was a bear at one time. Like she just couldn't be around him. Like he was part of the angst and cause for some of her episodes. So it was more of like he stopped fighting and just gave in it was like a self-sacrifice. Like, okay, I'm going to let you go because I can't keep making you worse. So when that happened, it was like, okay, it's me and mom and against the world. And I grew up very fast, like you said, and it was very exhausting because there were times when I was like alone at home because she literally would disappear sometimes. I'm like 8 and we're in this apartment in the not the greatest part of town, and she just wouldn't come home sometimes. And you're like looking for, like, sometimes the electric would be on, sometimes the bill hadn't been paid, and you know, you're sitting in a cold apartment eating spaghetti noodles because that's all you can afford. I remember many meals of spaghetti noodles, butter, and tuna. So, but you just kind of get to the place where you're like, it's survival mode, you know, and you've got to be the person kind of holding it together. I didn't know I had any other choice because it was my personality was very like my youngest daughter, she's very rule abiding, you know, she's not a rebel. She's taking care, you know, like she has everything in order. And I was very similar as a kid. Like I fought for that normalcy. And so if she wasn't going to provide it, I was going to try to provide it, whatever I thought that was. But there are times when she wasn't coming home, you know, there's these confidentiality laws. And even back then, like if you check yourself into a hospital, if a mental hospital, if someone calls to ask if they're there, there's a confidentiality law that they can't say that person is actually checked in there.
Right.
So here I am, 8 years old, trying to call these hospitals, like trying to find my mom. Like, is she in a ditch somewhere or is she in the hospital, which I'm hoping, or something. And it was just a really weird time of life because they couldn't release her name or say she was there, even if she was. And I'm 8, so I can't like drive around and find her. You know, it was just really weird. And like me and my brother, we would kind of make jokes about it. I remember this one time in particular we were looking for her, and she had just visited Disneyland, and she was having hallucinations that she was Minnie Mouse for a little while. And so I was like calling around the hospitals and like, do you have this person? Well, we can't say that, you know. I'm like, and we were just like losing it. Really, it's like, okay, is Minnie Mouse there? Can you tell me there is a Minnie Mouse there? And we're thinking, well, you know what? There might be multiple Minnie Mouses there. So our Minnie Mouse looks like, you know, she's short and brown. You know,
wow.
you just kind of find some humor in it, right? Because otherwise you're just going to crack, you know. So it was a really interesting thing. And through the years, to your point, like who I am now, how did it mold me and form me? I ended up suppressing all of it for many years, all through my high school, my 20s, my 30s, you know. And what I did is I sought out things that I thought would kind of fill those gaps and voids. You know, in high school, it was religion. Like I read the Bible front to back. Like I just needed some kind of guidance. I'm like, well, I think I'll get some guidance here. You know, so I took it verbatim, and I was like a sponge, and I was like Sister Christian all through high school, basically. I was kind of had a reputation, I think. And then, but secretly I was still falling apart, you know, and totally masking it, and couldn't tell anyone still really what was going on. I was just still kind of like, I mean, to say the things I've already said out loud, if I would say that to a school counselor, I mean, like, she'd be like, aliens in the light sockets. What, you know, I didn't even know how to say that back then, you know, so I would just hide it. But then I got into the young adult years, and I just rebelled complete opposite. I went like self-destruction mode. I didn't realize it, but I think slowly trying to kill myself, you know, just I was like drinking like crazy. I mean, there were moments I don't even know how I survived it. I was just looking to, I don't know, escape maybe, or cope, or whatever it was. Right. And because she was, at moments when she was ill, she would say awful things, you know, call me awful names and say awful things to me. And those sink into my psyche. So I think in my younger years, I was just believing those titles and those things that she said, you know, I was buying into it. I'm trash, I'm whatever, you know. So I was just, I think slowly just, I was living very recklessly. And so at some point, I started cleaning up my act. I got a really good job, you know, I started just becoming a workaholic. So I traded one thing for another, these like secret little addictions, I think, you know. First it was like religion, then it was alcoholism, and then it was like now workaholic. I mean, I was working 70, 80 hours a week and all that kind of stuff, and just learning everything I could about what I was doing. And that was my identity for a while, you know. But over time I was, you know, I was able to, like, I got married, I started living a normal life. And when I had kids, that's when like everything changed for me. You know what I mean? Like I was like a new person, right? You know, I was like having, and it was scary as heck too. I'd thought about it a lot, and like, oh my gosh, I have no idea how to be a mom, right? I just said, I will just do everything opposite.
Sure.
So that became my thing. I like threw myself completely into parenting. You know, everything was about them. And so fast forward a couple years, I got divorced, and I got married again. I got divorced, and I realized, you know what, I am still broken. I'm still carrying some of these demons, even though I was, you know, all in parenting. I wasn't all in my relationships. You know, what I found is I was finding the wrong people, right? I was finding the people that would treat me like not the best, you know? And so I just had a huge breakdown right around my mid-30s. It all came crashing down because I had just pretended so long. I had swept it under the carpet. I had put on my mask. I had pretended so long, and I was trying to do it alone. You know, I didn't have much of a support system, you know, because no one else knew what to do. And I didn't have a good community. I wasn't seeking that out. I wasn't taking care of myself, you know, those kinds of things. And with my second divorce, it was really awful. He was having an affair, and it just broke me. It totally broke me. And it was like this intersection crossroads where everything just came together. And it was like a perfect storm. And I was like, my mom was right. I'm replaceable. I'm trash. I felt like an appliance wheeled out to the curb waiting for the trash. I mean, that's how I saw myself. And I was so broken. And I came to the point where I was just like, that's what I am. I'm a broken mess. And that's all I'm ever going to be, you know? And it was an awful lie. And it was at this moment that I lost all of the hope. I lost hope, faith, all that kind of stuff. And I had this moment where I attempted suicide. And it was something I'm not real proud of, but it was a big, big moment that luckily obviously I came to. What happened is I was really close to, I was losing consciousness, and I called 911, and they got there like in the split second, and the entire city was there. It was awful. But what I remember is realizing, I'm like, as much of a hard childhood as I had, and the strained relationship I had with my mom, I still loved her. You know, came down to I still loved her. And I thought, oh my gosh, you know, because up to that moment, I believed I was actually going to ruin my kids because I was so broken and they'd be better off without me. At that moment, that's what got me there at that moment. And I was like, oh my gosh, what a lie. You know, I'm like, as much as, you know, I love my mom still, I know my kids need me. I know my kids love me because I threw myself into them. We were like a unit. We were the best, you know, like it was awesome. So their faces flashed before me, and I was just like, man, I gotta make it. I gotta make it. And it was the scariest moment because when the paramedics got there, they were like, I don't know, like I couldn't speak at that point, and they were just like treating me like I was a dead body. Anyway, they couldn't get a stick, they couldn't get a pulse. I mean, they couldn't, not a pulse, but they couldn't start an IV because my blood pressure was so low. So they're like talking among themselves, like, you know, like they're having a sandwich or something. They're like, I don't know if this one's gonna make it. You know, I don't know, I might be here too late. Scared the heck out of me, and it really snapped me into like, oh my gosh, I have to live more than ever. I want to live more than ever. You've got to save me. And I couldn't say this, but so fast forwarding, blah, 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 all the sadness, blah, blah. But I'm going to tell you, there's 3 things that changed my life. Where are we at in timing? Do we have time?
We're making time for this one.
Okay. So what I really wanted to say is what changed my life is, first of all, not the attempted suicide. And I want to make it clear that that is not what turned my life around. Because if there's anyone out there in a situation where they're like, they've lost hope, they've lost faith, they've lost love, that is not the answer.
Yeah.
Because, you know, I came dangerously close. What the answer was one, stillness, just being quiet, taking away all of, because I was forced, you know, at this point to be still and quiet. And that's exactly what I needed. No phones, no TVs, no, you know, nothing. And it was ironic because I was running from all of this, right? My mom was busy having a nervous breakdown in another state. I was trying to save her during all of this. I just crashed during this moment. And here I was, ironically, in this place I never, ever wanted to be again, because I'd visited my mom at these mental hospitals before, and now I was in one. And I like to say and laugh that I was at the OSU hospital. I was in the nut house at the nut house. The Buckeye nuts, you know, the 100 nuts.
Oh, nice.
And I actually couldn't even see the stadium from my room. It was just really surreal.
Well, come on. You at least be able to see the stadium, right?
I know. Jeez. It was a good view. And I was like, this is exactly where I never, ever want to be again, you know? And I was looking around me, and I was like, oh my gosh. And I remember my mom saying at certain times, she's like, they treat me like a cattle. They don't treat me human, you know? Mm-hmm. And I just dismissed her before, because I'm like, yeah. You also see aliens, you know? Mm-hmm. But I was like, that's the first time I related to my mom in all these different ways. One, I realized that when she attempted suicide, because she attempted suicide several times in my life. So I had that model already. And one time it was a really awful, bloody attempt. It was just terrible. And I remember being so mad at her. And for the first time, I realized it wasn't a gimmick for her. It wasn't trying to get attention. I mean, some of them were, but this one attempt where she was absolutely dead serious, you know, it was a different thing. And for anyone listening out there, if you're a survivor, for instance, of it, or if you knew someone who has done this, understand it's not about you. It's not about you could have saved someone else or anything like that. That is a decision that's very personal that people make. And it's not usually about a gimmick of trying to get attention. It's usually about like, look, I'm done, and I don't have anything more. And it's a release. It's an escape, almost ultimate. Like, it was physical pain that I was getting out of, trying to just release from the hell that I was in. I didn't know how to get out of, you know? So anyways, so the stillness of the hospital forced me into like this meditative, listen to what's going on. I looked around me and I saw people that had been in there, and they'd been medicated and then released. I call it catch and release. And they've come back in because that's their pattern. You know, they knew the staff by name, you know, and I'm like, holy crap, that is not going to be my reality. I will never let this moment be in vain. And that's why I talk about it openly, just because I never want that to be in vain. And I want to have this moment change my life forever. So I realized, okay, I've got to change my thinking. I've got to change my lifestyle. I've got to change everything. So what I did is I started looking, and I was like, the big thing in my life is I just didn't want to be my life. I didn't want my life. I was mad and upset that other people's life just seemed so much like they have moms that care and all that kind of stuff. So what I had to do is there's three things. One was acceptance of my life, right where I was, ugly, good or not. You know, I had two beautiful kids, so there's a lot of positive that I have, but the negative is what I had to do the accepting on. I had to accept right where I was. I can't change it. I can't wish my life away. I spent so much time wishing I was somewhere else or someone else. So I had to just be okay, like, I accept me for me, done. Then I had to accept others. So every one of these, there's three things, and every one of these things were twofold. So I had to accept me for me. I had to accept others for who they were too, limits and all, and stop expectation things, like stop expecting people to be different, stop expecting them to be something more, just accept them right where they were. So acceptance of myself, acceptance of them. The second was forgiveness, and forgiveness of all the things I'd done, you know, because I beat myself up. I was the number one flogger of myself, you know, just beating myself down for everything. And so I had to just forgive myself for those things. And I also had to forgive others for what they had done. And this, I'm going to say, is not a one-time thing. It's not a one-time deal. All of these, acceptance of these things, forgiveness of me, and forgiveness of others. It's not just like, okay, I did that. That felt good. It's an everyday thing.
Right.
It's, you know, because every day or every now and then that scab is, removed, and like someone says something or does something, and PTSD comes into the play. You know what I mean? Like you have to go right back, and you're like, okay, I'm choosing forgiveness right now.
Yep.
And over and over and over. So it's a progress thing, not a moment in time thing.
Yeah, exactly. Forgiveness is a process, not an act, right?
Yeah. It's a
Yeah.
lifestyle, really, you
That's
know?
yeah.
And then
That's
the other
absolutely
thing
right.
was surrendering of everything, surrendering of control, because I realized I was a control freak. So to your point, you know, when you're saying, how did you cope with all that? I was a control freak. I couldn't control anything in my
Mm-hmm.
life, but I was going to control my little micro world, you know,
Gotcha.
and that was exhausting to your
Yeah.
point. Like, talk about being so tired. I realized I was such a control freak that I was like robbing my own happiness, you know, all the time. So I had to let go of that. I had to let go. I had to surrender control. I had to surrender myself, my will or whatever, you know, like my expectations, you know, all that kind of stuff.
Right.
So those were the three things that changed everything for me. And again, it's not like, okay, I did that. It's a working out kind of thing. It's like when you're trying to weight train or working out, it's a everyday constant rewiring. So like all my thought patterns that I had before, I honestly felt like, you know how water creates a canyon, like
Mm-hmm.
the Grand Canyon. It's all what just water comes down the same channel every time. So when you're having those negative thoughts, you know, it's so easy for that water to come down this channel because that's what, you know, it's comfort zone stuff. So I had to like, I remember in the very beginning, like thought coming, scoot it over here down this path. You know, I wanted to make it come down here and
Right.
make a new Grand Canyon, you know? So it does get easier, just like working out. Like you get in that routine, it does get easier, you know, but it never, but you stop and your progress will stop. So, you know, you got to apply those principles every day,
Right.
every week.
Yep. I think a lot of us have this illusion that we're going to get to a point where we have to stop working, where it's just like, I'm going to get here and then I'm going to be okay. You know, I mean, it's, you know, in the Eastern philosophies, they'll say nirvana, like, you know, like it's someplace you get and then you're like, just chill all the time. It doesn't
Yeah.
work that way.
Yeah.
You know, and it doesn't work. You know, I'm so glad that you brought that up because I mean, you know, so many people who have mental illnesses think that they're just going to get over it and everything's going to be fine. And so many people who deal with those who, or take care of those who have mental illness, just have that, like, gosh, that secret hope that it's just going to magically go away someday, and I think when you talked about those flashes as a child, that kind of had to, maybe at least go through your mind a little bit of just like, she's back, maybe it'll stick this time.
Yeah, all the time I wish that.
Yeah. And it doesn't always stick. So my goodness. Well, you know what, I really appreciate you've been absolutely vulnerable and open, and this is powerful stuff. So do you have anything, final thoughts on this before we start to wrap up this episode, because this has been absolutely amazing.
Yeah, that's a lot, right? It's I've learned the vulnerability, for some it's absolutely uncomfortable, and there's people in my life, they're like, shut up, stop talking about it, stop saying it out loud, sweep it under that carpet. We don't want to hear that, because it's painful and scary. But I've learned that vulnerability creates community. I've found my tribe of people by talking about it, because we operate in this silo, and how many people are out there struggling right now and don't know that, oh my gosh, she's gone through something crazy. I'm not alone. That is powerful. So I put myself out there, I guess, mainly for others, because I've been there and I've been alone and wishing for someone that I could relate to, so that's why I do it.
This is powerful stuff, and I appreciate everything that you do. It's just so amazing, and to us, to those, when you're going through stuff like that and you're helping others, it doesn't feel amazing. It just feels like what you need to do. But to those of us, who are seeing it from the outside, it truly is. So, I have a ton of respect for you and everything you're doing. And speaking of that, obviously you've succeeded in the 20-minute not talking about your business challenge and then some, which is absolutely fantastic. So, being a man of my word, I want to give you 5 minutes to, talk about what you do, how people can get in touch with you, whatever you want.
Yeah. So, part of my healing was I just started getting into different creative outlets, just out of necessary need. When I was a kid, I would write music, and I still kind of write music, but as you get to be an adult, you lose the opportunity to, like, it's hard to be a singer-songwriter with kids, like it's nights out and stuff like that. So I suppressed all that creativity. But after that moment in time, I had my rewiring moment. I started looking for other creative outlets that I could do while the kids were asleep. I put them to bed. So I started getting into a couple of different things. The first thing that really changed my life and turned into a hobby and turned into a monetary stream was macro photography. So I started taking pictures because that whole thing of wishing my life away and wish I was somewhere different. I was like, I don't live in Costa Rica or Hawaii. There's nothing beautiful here in Ohio. Ohio sucks. So it became this personal challenge to start finding beauty right where I was. And I didn't believe I was even going to find it. I was like, we'll see what's happening here.
Yeah.
So I started finding, oh gosh, crazy beauty all around me, like by a dewdrop on the grass, and it sounds ridiculous. But the interesting thing is that started changing my perspective in all kinds of other ways. Because I started finding beauty in frost and beauty in all of the circumstances that I hated before. I hated winter. I hated all that. So I started taking these pictures and putting them out there, and people started like, can I buy that print? I'm like, I don't even know how to do that, I guess, So one thing kind of led to another, and then I started dabbling into painting. And here's an interesting thing. I did not like abstract work before my moment, breakthrough. I didn't even understand it. I got angry at abstract because I'm like, what is that? Like, I need trees and cows and things. So I became this abstract artist because I loved the idea of the feeling it evoked and what it did for a room. And, I really got into it. So I started doing that too. And again, people are like, can I buy it? I'm like, okay, sure. So now I'm an artist. I'm a nature photographer, and I've also started a new business called Artinology. So what I did is I took all of these things, because I was in the corporate world for about 25 years or 30 years, just to make it, to feed my kids and everything.
Sure.
And so what I did is I've taken, me and my partner, I've taken this idea of corporate philosophies and the idea of teams and all that kind of stuff, and art, and infusing them together in this thing called Artinology. This is what I'm most excited about, this business idea. So we go into teams and we do some team building activities, but it's not just like, okay, everybody paint a pineapple, we all have a pineapple. This is very different. We get together with teams and we infuse psychology, emotional intelligence, and true like core driving motives emerge through the activities that we provide. So while they're making their art or they're focused on that, they end up, these core driving motives end up coming out, and we get to talk and discuss about why they do the things they do. So that's kind of like what's going on right now. Artinology.com. You can go to our website and see what we're doing there, because it's a really exciting thing. It's something that is really different in the industry, and we're super psyched about it.
Yeah, I love how you're changing how people think, and that's what creates real progress. So, thank you again for sharing artinology.com, and we'll make sure we have the link and any other links you want in the show notes when we release it, so everybody can come check you out. So, well, thank you very much. Any parting words?
Just thank you. Thanks, Lee, for doing what you do and giving us all the opportunity to, be real.
Well, it'll be nothing without you being real, so we appreciate you sharing your journey with us today. Lee, thank you so much. We are out of time, but if you found Lee After Dark more entertaining and relevant than the rest of the dreck out there, then subscribe to the Lee After Dark YouTube channel, and now get Lee After Dark in your pants. We're on Anchor FM, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Breaker, Pocket Cast, and who the heck knows where else. So you can enjoy us wherever you stick your phone. Until next time, this is Lee Rowley with my friend Lee Lander. Be present and be well.